My name is Ron Scalera, and I'm a rock and roller from the era that JT loves. I grew up a child of the 70s and played, Led Zeppelin and The Who and all that good stuff, and got into jazz later, but still have a great appreciation for the roots of classic rock and the Beatles and great songwriting and stuff like that. Even today we're recording on 24-track 2-inch tape, which anyone I think who was born after probably 1975 has no idea what that is. Officially, I'm not a member of this. I am the what do you call? I'm the fifth, seventh son, they like to call me. So I'm a fan, and I'm also I'm just a side man.
So talk about your musical roots, how you got started playing music.
My musical roots started with my father, who was, when he was a youngster and a teenager in the 50s, he played in 50s rock and roll bands, and he played drums, but he really wasn't a rock and roll fan. I mean, at the time, it was cool to do, in the 50s. My dad was not a jock or anything like that, but he was into the music thing, but he was much more of a jazz fan, and he loved big band, and he had, I think, aspirations of becoming a more serious musician. He went to Juilliard for a while and the whole thing. He wound up not becoming a musician. Most people, for the same reasons. It's hard to make any money doing it, but anyway, he played piano and played trombone. As I said, he loved big band, and so I grew up with him listening to a lot of great jazz records, and he was a big Tony Bennett fan, and Frank Sinatra and Bill Evans and Maynard Ferguson and Count Basie. He loved all that stuff. So I listened to that, but his younger brother was more into the rock and roll stuff. He certainly was a big fan of Crosby, Stills and Nash, Simon and Garfunkel, Bob Dylan, and it was through him he was more like a bigger brother, only about 5 years older than me, and so it was through him that I got into playing guitar, and I just thought it was the neatest thing. Playing my dad's trombone as an 8-year-old just wasn't the coolest thing. I even played trumpet and stuff for a while because that was the music I kind of understood. And then as I got a little older and I saw my uncle, he could sit down and just play a song and sing, and I go, that's amazing, that was so cool, what is that, And so I was like the little kid bugging him all the time as a 10 and 11-year-old, saying, who's the greatest guitar player in the world, and ask him all these stupid questions. But of course he'd keep answering me. He had a good answer. He'd say, Eric Clapton. I'd go, okay, and he'd leave and go out on a date or something, and I'd fish through his records and I'd find Eric Clapton. I'd sit there, listen to Eric Clapton, and sneak his little he had a Hagstrom electric guitar under the bed, and I'd sneak it out and I'd play through his Silvertone amp and make sure I put everything back and the knobs exactly the same because I didn't want to get caught. But he showed me how to play songs and stuff like that. And then when I was a 7th grader, I started a band at Mount Vernon Grammar School in Newark, New Jersey. And we played Zeppelin and all the stuff that we were listening to back then, lots of Zeppelin. And then I met, in high school, I met a drummer named George Coleman, whose father is the George Coleman, world famous jazz saxophonist. And slowly my musical world got because it sort of took me back to my dad's days. And there was like a period where I'd make fun of like rock. Oh, that's so simplistic, it's terrible. And so we'd play nothing but jazz, but after a while, I'm a pretty open-minded person when it comes to music, so I just play a little bit of everything. But those are my roots, rock and roll roots. So, and I did that for a long time. I played in every kind of band you could think of. I played in top 40 bands. I played in hard rock bands. I played weddings. I played the Korean doctors' yearly whatever they have at Tavern on the Green. I've played all kinds of weird things, but like many people, life takes a different turn. You wind up doing another profession. So it's still my single greatest love, beyond my family. And I really enjoy doing it. And I love guys like JT who, I see a little bit of me in what he does too. So it's pretty cool.
Talk about what you do now and then what you'd really like to be doing.
What I do now is I work for CBS. I'm the executive vice president of marketing for CBS, and it's a good job. It's a creative job. We get to produce a lot of commercials, promos, video pieces. So you use, and I liked video too when I was a kid. My dad wound up becoming a photographer, so I was always around film and you know, still cameras and movie cameras. I would make little home movies. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was 11, I went to go see The French Connection with my father, and I loved it. And the first thing that movie was over, I said, "Dad, who made that movie?" And he said, "The director makes the movie." I said, "Who's the director who made that movie?" He said, "It's, what's his name, William?" No.
William Friedkin.
He said, "William Friedkin." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm going to write to William Friedkin and ask him how to become a director." So I went home. He said, "Good idea." So I went home, I wrote a letter, and I guess from the movie post or whatever, it was like, then it was called Burbank Studios over at Warner Brothers. Wrote him a letter. Guy wrote me back. I still have the letter. He said, you know, he advised me, you know, watch good movies, learn what makes a movie really good. So anyway, I didn't do that. But getting back to what I do now, yeah, so I work for CBS. Formerly, I worked for Fox, and you know, so we produce a lot of, you know, you use a lot of talents. You have to use video talent, music talent, design talent. So it's a good job. It's still a creative job. Pays a little bit better than rock and roll. And
But if you had your dream.
if I had my dream, you know, I guess my dream has changed. I mean, I think in the beginning, working in television was always something. Well, I was an intern at a TV station in New York. It was WNEW, Channel 5. And it was sort of like, well, you know, once it's over, I'm back to playing. Because I was still doing gigs when I first started working at did the internship. Then it became like an hourly job. I got an hourly job at the station. It was sort of like, yeah, well, I do my hourly job, but I was still playing on weekends, and that's what I was going to do. And then I got kind of absorbed into the whole world of television, and before you know it, that was kind of what I did. But now that I'm getting a little bit older, and I'm beginning to appreciate what really is important in life, if in a perfect world, I think that I still would. It would be great. I mean, it's everybody's dream. Wouldn't it be great to be in a really great band that plays, you know, really great music and is popular enough to, you know, afford yourself the luxury of not only having a nice lifestyle, but basically to do what it is you want to do. And again, boys and girls, don't try this at home. There's about 1/1000000000th of 1% of everybody who gets in the music business ever gets there. But and even bands like the biggest bands in the world, you name them, you know, the Beatles, Metallica, you know, they still fight like they're 16 years old. I mean, so I'm sure it's on the inside, it's a lot tougher than people think, and it's really, really hard to get there. But that's the dream. The musical background that I have still influences what I do today, mainly in that two key reasons. One is that music is the cornerstone of virtually every piece of marketing that you see out there for movies or television shows. Whether it's scored or it's adapting pop music, or in some cases, you know, having to do some kind of hybrid. I mean, the music is the thing that sets the emotional tone for everything you do. So think of every TV spot or every commercial you've seen or every movie trailer. Imagine it without the music. I mean, so it's because it feeds on a subconscious emotional level. That's number one. Number two is about half of all the people who work in TV are former musicians. So it's good to have that point of reference, because when they start talking about stuff, you go, oh, you know, I once did a gig in Cleveland, and there you go.
Okay, cool. Great. Terrific. That's great.